It is your master of unlocking, Horror Queen Cosplay, here to talk about some really funny little nifty thing I like about video games. Today I want to talk about one of my favorite mechanics in games, and that is lockpicking. I actually adore the lockpicking system in Skyrim. It's one of my favorite aspects of the game. The Thieves Guild questline is one of my favorite questlines as well. I was actually quite surprised to find out that lockpicking was something that a lot of people really hated in Skyrim. And listen, to each their own, but I find lockpicking to be really fun and interesting in video games. Not to mention, it can also be very versatile as well. There's no real 100% best or right way to do lockpicking in a video game. It really depends upon the game itself, its tone, and what just works with its balance. So let's talk about a couple different ways that lockpicking appears in video games. We're not really going to be showing off major spoilers for any of these games, really just the puzzle of lockpicking themselves. The first is a very typical outside visual look at how lockpicking functions. This is the most realistic in terms of realism, if you want to call it that. You get the same view that you would have if you were to be lockpicking in real life. Unfortunately, despite this outfit, I've never actually tried to pick a lock myself. This is your very stereotypical Bethesda, Skyrim, Fallout style lock. It's also seen in Wolfenstein. You even see it in video games like Call of Duty, Black Ops Cold War, and a personal favorite, Dying Light. This does bring up a really interesting aspect of lockpicking mechanics in video games. It's not just the way that you want to approach how it's going to be picked or whatever. It's also whether or not gameplay is going to be paused while you're lockpicking. In Bethesda games like Skyrim, the game pauses while you're doing the physical lockpicking itself. Obviously, people can notice you if they see you starting to pick the lock, or they turn around and see you standing over a door that was just freshly picked. But the physical act of lockpicking pauses everything in the game, and you can just scream as you break 20 lockpicks in a row trying to open up a master lock. However, in a video game like Dying Light, which is a zombie parkour action game, this game relies heavily upon movement and not staying in one place. If you stay in one place, that is a surefire and easy way to get yourself killed and overrun by zombies. However, lockpicking requires you to stay in place for a certain period of time. By not pausing the gameplay while you are lockpicking, it actually highlights the survival horror aspect of the game and brings in a little bit of danger, makes you really think, oh, is it safe? Should I take the risk or not? Further enhancing the overall vibe and point of the game itself. This is my personal favorite brand of lockpicking mechanics in games, just because it's the most infuriating for a lot of people, but because I've spent so many hundreds and hundreds of hours on Skyrim, maybe it's just a nostalgia reason why I particularly enjoy this type of lockpicking. I guess in a way you could also count the Kingdom Come Deliverance lockpicking system like this one. It is its own unique version of lockpicking. I couldn't quite get very much clips of it while I was attempting to play because this game doesn't pause while you're lockpicking, and I got caught. Which, in a way, the Kingdom Come Deliverance lockpicking system is kind of a bridge in between what you would see in Skyrim versus what you see in this next category, which is a traditional X-ray type lockpicking style. This is where you can see physically in the tumbler, and you're seeing how lockpicking actually functions in a traditional lock tumbler system. Your Splinter Cell series, your Nancy Drew video games. Yes, there's lockpicking in the Nancy Drew point-and-click games. I'm telling you. They're good stuff. Y'all are sleeping if you haven't played a point-and-click Nancy Drew game. this is what we typically think of when we're thinking of a lockpicking mechanic in a video game, and there's plenty of different ways that you can spice it up. You can do what the BioShock Infinite Burial at Sea DLC Episode 2 specifically, where you're playing as Elizabeth, does, where it does the tumbler system, but there is a bit of a timing element to it, and if you do it wrong, you can have an alarm blare at you, unless you wanted that on purpose, since that particular section of the game is highly based upon stealth. Or if you do it right, you can get little bonus extra pieces of ammo to help you out later on in the game. And then there's also Signalis, which is another survival horror game where you quite literally craft the key itself instead of playing around and poking at it with pins as you would for a traditional lockpicking sequence. All of these are great examples of classic lockpicking, showing you how it actually functions, while you can also add your own special twists to it. For the third section, or type of lockpicking, it borderlines almost upon hacking. Hacking and lockpicking in video games tend to get really close sometimes to each other, but I'm categorizing these two games as lockpicking as opposed to hacking, partially because they are called lockpicking in-game, and partially also because they just feel mechanically closer to what you would expect out of a lockpicking element rather than you would a computer hacking based element like you would see in BioShock 1 and 2, for example. This particular category is more of a timing based category, finding that right sweet spot. Like you would picking a lock, you're trying to find that sweet spot for everything to unlatch. This can be seen in video games like Choo Choo Charles. Yes, the indie horror game where you're running from a demonic cosmic horror train with spider legs. Yeah, that has lockpicking in it. And also Resident Evil Revelations 2. Resident Evil Revelations 2 is actually the only Resident Evil game that gets close to traditional lockpicking, despite having one of the most iconic lockpicking characters of all time, Miss Jill Valentine. Yeah, in Resident Evil Revelations 1, Jill hacks doors with a screwdriver rather than traditionally lockpicking them. I don't want to say it's a missed opportunity, but it sure was interesting. Sidebar, I do adore Resident Evil Revelations. It is one of my favorite Resident Evil titles and was the reason why I purchased a Nintendo 3DS when the game came out when I was in high school. Back when it was an exclusive, so okay, this isn't me saying anything bad about Resident Evil Revelations 1. Regardless, Choo Choo Charles and Resident Evil Revelations 2 essentially has you trying to find that sweet spot to that crate. It's hard for me to describe with words. Here's the visuals. Here's the visuals for it. The fourth type of lockpicking in a video game, if you really even want to call it lockpicking, is just physically watching the character pick the lock, pressing a button, and they just do it. That is most Resident Evil titles, along with technically also Call of Duty Black Ops 2, watching Elizabeth pick locks in BioShock Infinite's main game, several other types of games. Now, I know I was just criticizing Resident Evil for never really giving Jill a proper lockpicking. Heck, none of the characters really do a proper lockpicking in any of the games. There are plenty of other characters that have lockpicking as part of their skill sets, but never actually do it, like Ethan Winters in Resident Evil Village, as well as one of the characters in Resident Evil Outbreak. Just as I said before about thinking about the mechanic needs to reflect the game, it kind of makes sense why Resident Evil never really does a traditional lockpicking sequence, because it might take away from the action. Doing a traditional lockpicking sequence in Dying Light, for example, while not pausing, highlights what makes this game stand out apart from other zombie games, and that is the need to constantly move. While yes, in a lot of Resident Evil titles, you can easily get overwhelmed in specific sequences and it's good to keep moving, it is based more upon the altercations with the zombies itself, and giving a little lockpicking element might lower the adrenaline you might have going rather than heighten it like it does in Dying Light. So, okay, yeah, it's sad that you never really actually get to truly lockpick as Jill Valentine, but it's understandable, and who's to say in a later Resident Evil title we won't get that. Finally, the fifth version or type of lockpicking that you have in video games is the kind of sort of, I guess it counts as lockpicking. Not quite like the ones that I mentioned in the third category. I'm talking the Baldur's Gate 3 roll a dice and you lockpick. Yes, you have to have a lockpicking kit in your inventory, and yes, it helps to have extra bonuses, but you're really just mostly dealing with a dice roll. Granted, Baldur's Gate 3 is based around traditional D&D mechanics. My first ever D&D character was actually a Tabaxi rogue who really loved lockpicking because I love lockpicking in video games, not in real life. I don't want to potentially be looked into for crimes, but I enjoy it in video games. So yeah, it counts as lockpicking. It's its own version, I guess, of a lockpicking mechanic that really you're gonna call it lockpicking, but it's part of the larger mechanic of the way the game functions as a whole. And also My Sims Agents for the Wii. I absolutely adore the My Sims games, especially the Wii editions. I loved playing them when they were first coming out when I was younger. My Sims Kingdom, and My Sims Agents are such comfort video games for me. I love replaying them whenever I'm in the mood. And My Sims Agents, it's not quite hacking because it does function like a much more complicated version of a tumbler lock where you are moving pieces out of the way in a puzzle function. So not quite hacking, it's just a really, really, really complicated tumbler lock sequence, almost, kinda, sorta. Either way, it definitely is one of the more interesting and unique types of lockpicking out there. And I'm sure I probably missed a lockpicking function here and there out of your favorite games. Feel free and tell me in the comments below what your favorite type of lockpicking mechanics are. I wanted this to be a bit of a shorter video, especially since I just came out with that massive, almost 3-hour Call of Duty video, so I just want to talk about something that I find very interesting and very fun in video games, and just the ways that they can all manifest depending upon the game itself. What works for a game like Nancy Drew might not work for a game like Choo Choo Charles, or Resident Evil, or Bioshock, or Splinter Cell. All of these. Lockpicking is always my favorite in Skyrim. I will die on that hill that it is fun. At least for me. We all have different types of puzzles that make us mad and other types of puzzles we enjoy. I've certainly had my fair share of mental breakdowns on certain puzzles while playing them on stream. So, you know, lockpicking just happens to be one that I actually enjoy. And if there's a specific game mechanic that you would like me to break down, please do let me know in the comments below. Hopefully I will see y'all for another video. Take care, my dears. Take care, my darlings. Something something Jill Sandwich, Master of Unlocking? I'll see you again soon. Bye.